and welcome to GameSack. And as it turns out, we both have a backlog of games that we need to play, so this episode is an excuse to finally play some of the games we haven't.
Yeah, there's actually tons of games out there we have never ever played before, but they're still sitting in our libraries at home. So this is, obviously, like Joe said, our chance to do that.
Indeed. So let's just get started. Okay, so let's check out Carrier on the Dreamcast from Jalico. This game was given to the show and I have no idea what it's about. It looks kinda scary. So it turns out that the northern and southern hemispheres are at war with each other, mainly because the southern hemisphere is super jealous of all the food and stuff that the north has. However, the north is on the side of righteousness and they have a massive aircraft carrier called Heimdall that went silent. You're sent to investigate and you arrive after another team, but you get shot down by the ship. You quickly discover that it's infected by zombies. Well, technically they're just known as monsters, but come on, they might as well be zombies. I mean, they all used to be human. Right away, the similarities to Resident Evil are obvious. First off, it's a survival horror game, and one that has tank controls, limited ammo, limited healing supplies, and sparse save points. So it's basically like Resident Evil on a ghost ship in the middle of nowhere. Hey, I've played this before when it was called Resident Evil Revelations. Do the developers of Carrier have no shame ripping off a game that came out 12 years in the future? Anyway, this one's more like the classic Resident Evil games with what appears to be pre-rendered backgrounds with polygons on top. But nope, it's all polygons. Sometimes the camera will actually move around a room to give you a better view or even follow you. Doesn't happen too often though. As you'd expect, the majority of the game is extremely dark and the enemies are tough to see. Some of them are almost completely invisible. The scope that you get early in the game, which helps you identify monsters, will help out. Often, the zombies will be disguised as humans and they'll try to trick you.
It's a monster! Don't let it fool you, son!
And you're allowed to kill the humans and they die with a single shot. I guess I should have used the scope to see which one was the zombie. Oh well. Oops, I'm guessing I probably shouldn't have shot that guy. He wasn't a zombie. He probably even had an awesome item for me. I'd really like to take it off of his corpse, but the game won't let me. So the game lets you kill innocent people, but it won't let you steal their belongings. You'll spend a lot of time looking for ID cards to get in a certain door or for places to use some item that you recently picked up. Lots of running back and forth. I sometimes feel like I'm getting lost. There is a map, but it's not really much help at all. The graphics are pretty sharp and detailed, and most of the time they run at a great frame rate. VGA output is also supported, but hey, it's a Dreamcast game, so that's not too unusual. The sound and music is largely ambient and environmental, but it does a great job of setting the mood. Granted, it's nothing you haven't heard before if you've played these types of games, but it's still good. Control-wise, it takes a few seconds to get used to, and your guy turns around slowly, but otherwise it's workable. You toggle your weapons with the L trigger, and reloading is automatic. When you run out of weapons, you have your trusty taser, which can actually kill your enemies. Kinda helps if you're not surrounded, though. Overall, the game is fun, but try to save as often as you can. Otherwise, you can play Resident Evil Revelations, which saves every 6 steps you take. I kid, I really do like Revelations. But still, Carrier is a good survival horror game that's kind of like a marriage between the classic Resident Evils and Resident Evil Code Veronica in its presentation. Only without the Resident Evil. I like it.
I'll take care of it. You stay in the locker. It's okay. You can come out.
Here's ToeJam Earl 3, Mission to Earth for the Xbox. This game came out in 2002 and I remember that I actually wanted to buy this one. From the pics and everything else that I saw, I thought it looked really good. I don't remember why I didn't buy it though. Maybe it was because I didn't have the money at the time or because I was playing other games. Maybe it was because it wasn't getting very good reviews. Whatever the reason, I passed. Fast forward 14 years and I find it used at a local game store for $7 and I said, I'll buy that. Anyway, here we are, and somebody has stolen the 12 sacred funk albums from Lamont the Great Funkopotamus. ToeJam Earl and a new character, Letitia, travel to Earth to get these albums back. The gameplay is very similar to the first one, and that's good because I like that one. A few things have changed, and that's fine because sometimes change is good. For example, there are still elevators in this game, but instead of bringing you to the new floor, they bring you back to the hub world. From here, you enter new levels. Each level has multiple goals for you to complete. The main thing you need to do in each level is collect keys, since keys are what are required to open new levels. But besides that, you do other things like collect presents and convert Earthlings to the ways of funk. Presents are similar to the first game and contain all sorts of things like food and accessories to help you get around. The spring shoes are back and are super useful to hop from one island to another. One of the most useful presents that I've come across so far is the Funk Foo Blast. This will convert lots of humans that are all around you. Converting Earthlings is great because they give you points, and you need points to level up your character. This will make you stronger and able to kill tougher enemies. Okay, here's my only gripe about this game. With DVD technology, developers can do lots of cool things, like giving voices to characters and even non-playable characters. There's a fine line to be drawn here because if you don't watch out, things can get really annoying very quickly. Now, I'm fine with the voices that they gave the main characters, but I'm not fine that everyone has such a limited vocabulary. And it didn't take long for me to get a bit annoyed by the repetition.
Hey baby, check out my third leg.
But the game is loaded with cool features like random level generators, just like the first one. I also like the fact that you can switch between characters on the hub world. It also has really good graphics. Even today, I think they stand up very well. They're loaded with bright colors, lots of detail, and we even get a widescreen mode. There's also a day and night cycle, which I really like. It does have a few problems, and I've seen some screen tearing from time to time, but I'm okay with that. The in-game music is good as well, and to me it feels a lot like the first game. It has a simple beat most of the time that just blends in with everything else that's going on. I'm really happy that I was finally able to buy this game and actually play it. I'm pretty sure that I'll continue my quest to recover the 12 sacred albums of funk and see everything that this game has to offer. It's definitely a good time.
Wow, 3 legs! I have 2!
Well-deserved point.
Sorry, I must run.
What's up, little sister?
My mom
Word,
says
Dennis.
you're my
You the
dad
man.
and you owe us some money.
More money. Yo, construction. You cool?
This is Shapeshifter on the TurboGrafx-16 Super CD-ROM. I bought this at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo back in 2015. Now it's late 2016 and I still haven't gotten around to playing it. I've heard it's supposed to be like the legendary axe but on CD. Well, let's see how it is. You're Lycos, a barbarian warrior who's out to find and free the Ring of Five and save the kingdom. One thing I want to mention right away is that the story scenes and the intros seem to load a lot, which is really weird for a Super CD game given that it has more memory and whatnot. Anyway, I can see where the legendary axe comparisons come in. I mean, Lycos does look kind of similar. However, he can get new weapons and also upgrade the ones that he currently has. There's a central town here where you can do all of these things. Want to talk to people? Well, screw you, because Lycos can only talk to people who are behind doors. All the people you see walking back and forth completely ignore you. Also, forget about reading any text because everything is voiced over very poorly for your entertainment. And they all speak really slow.
Enter my humble home, young warrior. For a small offering, I will heal your wounds.
Sadly, that means visits to the shop and places like that are pretty sluggish. You can only skip conversations if you want to leave. If you want to buy something or even heal, you've got to listen to the back and forth spiel each and every time. Still, there's something about it that I enjoy. Maybe it's the cheesiness, or maybe it reminds me of trudging through old computer games, I don't know. Once you finally get out of town, you can fight monsters. You attack with your weapon if you're standing or in the air, but you kick when you crouch. The jumping will take some getting used to. Usually the monsters are fun to kill. The problem though is that a lot of enemies will come and just hover on you, and it's very hard to kill them. And they keep coming. They really love you. Each area seems to have their own enemy that does this to you again and again. Eventually you'll get to a boss, and usually they're not too hard. They do look kinda cool though. One thing that's interesting is the lunar eclipse window at the top of the screen. When the eclipse happens, you'll be struck by lightning and regenerate some of your health. You'll find yourself farming for money a lot though. Everything in town is expensive and the enemies rarely drop money, and when they do, it's just like 1 or 2 pieces of gold. It takes a while to earn enough to buy a weapon or enchant your current one. Another cool thing is that eventually you're able to shift your shape into different creatures, and you'll need to change into these creatures to get to certain areas. So it's kinda like Legendary Axe meets Wonder Boy 3. Be careful when you're the Panther though, because damn he's slippery. You also have a timer when you're in any of your alt modes. The game seems fairly large and there's a lot to explore and do. Fortunately, you can save your progress to the backup RAM. The game itself doesn't seem too difficult aside from the weird jumping that happens sometimes and the enemies that want to merge with you. The graphics are good, even though they look kind of chunky. Some of the scrolling is excellent and it reminds me of Shadow of the Beast. It's really impressive for the system. The music ranges from "it's okay" to "it has potential." Each bit of dialogue has its own CD track, of which there are nearly 100. My first impression of this game really isn't a bad one. I just wish that the pacing in the town would be better and that it'd be easier to make money. ICOM Simulations did a pretty good job for an American developer of the time. I definitely don't regret buying this one, and it might be one that you want to check out if you have the system.
Alright, Joe, what in the hell took so long to play these games?
I don't know, Dave, but at least we are finding an excuse to play them.
Finally, and I'm having a great time. How about you so far?
Indeed, let's get back into some more games.
Gun is a game by Neversoft and Activision that was released in 2005 on the PC and all of the consoles of the time. I bought the PlayStation 2 version here somewhere around 2007 for $9 brand new. Until I started recording footage for this episode, the game was still sealed. For 9 years it sat on my shelf waiting to be played and loved, and I overlooked it and almost forgot about it. Well, it's about time I give this game a shot, as I've heard good things. Gun takes place in the late 1800s and you take the role of Colton White. I wonder if he's a long-lost relative of mine. That would be really cool since he's a badass mountain man who becomes a gunslinger. After Colton's dad, who really isn't his dad, gets killed, he goes on a quest to find out who he really is. This is an open world type game and you can go just about anywhere you want. The main storyline, however, is very linear. There's no chance of you getting lost here, as what you need to do to progress the story is always in view. The story plays out through cinematic cutscenes that are fairly entertaining. They feel well written, albeit hokey at times, and the acting ranges from average to good.
Listen, I could use a dead shot like you to protect the Chinaman. How about it?
He's coming back inside with me.
Oh, lucky him.
The missions of the main story are fun to play, and you'll be battling all sorts of people from outlaw gangs to Native Americans. The action is always solid as you try to complete each area. There's many times that I laughed a lot in this game because of how ridiculous some of the actions are. A couple of examples that are just hilarious to me are firstly when you're fighting Native Americans. They love to shoot flaming arrows at you, and before you know it, you'll have a few stuck in your body. It's a cool idea, but Colton just keeps on going like he's perfectly fine and not about to catch on fire. This leads to the next hilarious moment. It seems that when Colton's life is low, he drinks whiskey to recover his life gauge. Everybody knows the healing powers that whiskey offers. It's like, oh man, these guys are killing me. I better take a quick shot while I'm in the middle of this battle to make everything all right. That's a bold move, Colton. Let's see if it pays off. Apparently it does indeed. It just looks funny and so out of place. So not only do you have the main storyline, but as with all sandbox games, you have loads of side quests and other things you can do to earn money. These include things like playing Texas Hold'em and digging for gold, which is luckily right on the surface. It's amazing that you're the only one that can see this, and why is this huge shiny boulder only worth $10? I guess 1800s money would that be worth maybe 100 today? I don't know. Or you can collect bounties off of wanted posters. These will take you to other towns, and the bad guys aren't too difficult to subdue, especially if you have a full flask of whiskey. These are just a few that I had a chance to try so far.
Please, let me live.
Using all the different guns is easy, and the game seems very lenient on its hit reticle. Even hand-to-hand combat is easy, and I haven't died in hand-to-hand combat yet. Well, except for fighting what I think would be a boss character. Those guys, of course, are tough and have a life bar that's kind of slow to drain. The open world looks great, and for the PS2 it feels very vast. It has lots of nice scenery and a good draw distance. It's one of the few PS2 games to run in both 480p and widescreen. The towns look good, but there's not a lot of people roaming around the streets like you'd see in a more modern game. I mean, you can hear a lot of people talking, but they're not visible to your eyeballs. There's not a lot of music going on, but when it does play, it sounds good and of course has nice Western themes. I don't know why it took so long for me to try this game, but it really is a good time, and I look forward to seeing if Colton finds himself. Not like that.
On ahead. We'll cover you.
Spawn on the Dreamcast from Capcom was another game given to the show. This one says it's straight from the Blockbuster arcade game. Well, it's gotta be fun then, so let's check it out. This one turns out to be an arena fighter. I was not expecting that. The main mode of this game is the boss attack mode. Basically, you choose your character and you're tossed into an arena. Eventually, the boss stops being lazy and shows up. You have a certain amount of time to defeat this boss. You can die all you want, but each time you do, you're penalized an amount of time on the clock. Beat the boss before the time runs out and you win. If he even has a sliver of life left on his bar when the time runs out, you lose and you've got to try again. There's a bunch of power-ups scattered around that'll help out. Stuff like weapon and defense power increases, life-restoring icons, and even new weapons to find. Control-wise, you have a button for attack, one to jump, and one to cycle between weapons and one to adjust the view of your camera. I struggled with these a lot. For one, the analog pad doesn't work at all. Moving around a 3D environment with the D-pad just feels wrong. And often, the button to switch your weapons doesn't work unless you press it for a good bit instead of quickly tapping it. And the camera absolutely sucks, the big one. You have very little control over it, and it's often hard to see what you're even shooting at. You can press the Y button to kind of focus on what you're shooting at, but it only does that if you happen to be firing a weapon. It doesn't work as a general recentering type of deal. Adding to the camera frustrations is the fact that you can't really see what's going on a lot of the time. It's pure chaos, and not even the good kind like Power Stone. Many of the arenas are quite big, and sometimes when you respawn, it sets you about 3 miles away from the boss. And by the time you find him again, you're close to being out of time. There's a helpful map that pops up sometimes though. You also have to deal with generic bad guys roaming around as well, and they will take you out when you're not expecting it. Sadly, you can't see through doors and other areas until you go through them. This ended up biting me in the ass a couple times. Eventually, I made it to a certain point and the game penalized me for not playing multiplayer. Or multiplayer, how do you pronounce it? No worries though, as you can play with a CPU team member and go through the locked stages. The CPU character actually does a really good job fighting, and this mode almost seems too easy at times. But make no mistake, because it will get challenging, even if it's the map that ends up doing you in. There's also other modes of play that center around team battles and free-for-all types of play. You can play with up to 4 players, but it's in split screen and there's no online mode. The graphics are pretty good with some nicely designed arenas and characters. I'm not at all familiar with Spawn, but I bet angsty teens liked them back then. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. I used to be an angsty teen. You bet I was angsty. You think I like complaining now? You should have seen me back then. The sound and music are good, and they don't do anything to bring my opinion down. I've never heard of the arcade game, and I didn't even know this game existed on the Dreamcast until it was given to us. It's not a bad game at all once you get used to it. It's kind of fun. I actually want to keep playing. Still, it's not the best arena fighter on the system. Both Outrigger and especially Quake 3 are better.
This is Legend for the Super Nintendo. This game was developed by Arcade Zone Ltd. And published by Sega. A few months ago, when Joe and I were throwing around the idea of doing an episode on copycat games, I was searching for games to cover. A few places that I visited on the interweb said that this game was a copycat of Golden Axe for the Genesis. Immediately, I thought this was going to be awesome, as Golden Axe is one of my favorite games for the Genesis. I bought a card-only copy but never got around to playing it until now. Sadly, it's more unlike Golden Axe than it is like it. This is your typical hack and slash game with hordes of enemies coming at you. They do their best to get on both sides of you, and they're really good at it. This, of course, is not where you want to be. Fighting enemies like this will always take a large toll on your life bar. The fighting mechanic is solid, although it's a bit sluggish, and a few times I felt that my button presses weren't registering. You do have a block button where you can raise your shield, but it's fairly slow, which lets your enemies hit you before you can get the shield up. So the best thing to do is this jump kick attack. I like this move and it works really well. When you jump and attack, your attack moves you across the screen. You can also use it to get out of a cluster of enemies. It doesn't do as much damage as normal attacks, but it'll eventually kill your foes. One thing that I'm sad about was that there's no grab attack for really close quarter fighting. That would have been a great addition to this game. But there are a few other attacks that you have that can be useful. The first one is this range attack, where you throw something at your enemy. This is strong, but the problem is it takes off a small portion of your life bar, so I only really used it when I was desperate. Then of course there are 3 types of magic attacks that you can do. There's a lightning type magic, which looks kind of cool and does some nice damage. Then there's a fire type magic, which is quite unimpressive. The third type is the best, and I guess you could say it was copied from the arcade game Golden Axe 2: The Revenge of Death Adder. It's a skull that comes down and breathes death breath on everything, well, except for you, of course. This is the most impressive one, and it's not even that impressive since it doesn't turn anyone to stone like it does in the arcade game Golden Axe 2. The magic is very helpful and requires 2 vials every time. You collect the vials from your fallen enemies. One interesting thing here is that every enemy you defeat drops something. Every single one. From gold to keys to food to magic. It's all good and your character picks it up automatically when you walk over it. The levels in this game are generally fun to play. They're very long and have some really nice looking backgrounds. The foregrounds can be a different story though. To create depth, the programmers put large things in the foreground like trees and pillars. While this does a good job of adding the depth that they so much desired, it's horrible for gameplay. There's more than a few times that you'll be fighting behind these things thinking, I wish I could see what the hell I'm doing over there. It really is an annoying feature, but at times it's not too bad if they use the right things like in this level. This is perfect because it adds to the depth and it doesn't interfere with the action. Between each level, there's a cool map screen that comes zooming in Mode 7 style, all badass like. It would have been really cool as the game progresses if the sword here became more notched and bloody. That would have been a great touch, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. The music here is pretty good. There's not a lot of variety and you'll hear the same tune all throughout the game, but it's pretty enjoyable. In the end, this isn't a ripoff of Golden Axe, but it is a very fun hack and slash that stands on its own. It's a great addition to the Super Nintendo library, and I'm glad that I finally got the chance to play it.
All right, those are some games that we have now finally played.
And I feel much better because I had a great time doing this episode.
Indeed. And we've still actually got more games in our libraries that we haven't played.
So if you'd like to see a part 2 of this, just click like, comment, and subscribe.
Or just let us know,
Just let us know, that'd be easier.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, what are some games that you have in your library that you haven't gotten around to playing yet? And why not? You know?
Why not?
Are you just a busy bee like Dave is? I mean, what's the deal?
Yeah, what's up?
And in the meantime, thank you
For watching GameSack.
Yeah, that's my line.
You're taking so long. Joe, I've got something I gotta tell you.
games?
Well, yes, I do, but no, I shouldn't.
Oh, I want to play this game. It's awesome.
I've got something I really need to tell you right
Dude,
now.
try this video game. It's awesome.
All right. Remember I had that sore in my hand?
Dude, jump over there.
Well, I just got back from the doctor's and, he told me it's contagious. So I just thought you'd like to know. See you later.